Red Bull are headed into the third potential weekend in which they might not win a race, which would be the longest streak for the Austrian squad after Mercedes smashed the 2022 record of Ferrari's back-to-back wins in Austria and Silverstone. It seems like Horner's squad isn't very sure about the performance of the car, and now that we're seeing significant gains from teams like McLaren and Mercedes, as well as Ferrari promising to fix the underlying issues of the problematic flaw that they had introduced in Spain, could Red Bull be in huge trouble ahead of Hungary? And if so, where does that put them on the map for the remainder of the season? It's safe to say that competitive racing in Formula One is back, and while the first 5 venues went in such a dominant fashion that they could be crucial for how both of the championships will end, it's now evident that Red Bull is in trouble, and the RB20 isn't producing the performance that the team hoped for. Although the team announced upgrades for venues like Spain and Silverstone, they went on to say that only small modifications were made and the all-in package would be introduced now in Hungary, where it would be evident if they could fix the issue with the instability of the car, as well as the turbulence it experiences with the curbs and the bumpy surfaces on the track. Helmut Marko was the first to speak about the importance of these upgrades, and when talking about it in a greater extent, the veteran Austrian said, "The bottom line for us is that everything has to be perfect for us to win. There can't be the slightest mistake. In Silverstone we were too slow on the medium tyre, but thank God there will be an upgrade in Budapest, and we hope this will bring us a step forward again. One thing is certain, the upgrade must work, because we're currently behind McLaren in the base, and if you look at Silverstone, we're also behind Mercedes. It's obviously crucial to get into the right temperature window, but the Red Bull is still not the fastest car at the moment, and we have to correct that with the update." This is definitely a worrying sign, because the RB20 hasn't had to deal with so much pressure in a long time, or to put it more precisely, the team didn't really feel any pressure to bring upgrades to their car due to the dominance they've had in the past couple of years. For example, we've seen that Verstappen had the comfort to complete a free pit stop in the last laps of the race just so that he could earn that extra point, and now the Dutchman has been absolutely obliterated on the medium tyre in Silverstone as well as in the intermediate, with Sainz cutting down 6 seconds of deficit in less than 3 to 4 laps. But the worrying sign can be traced in Newey's departure, and while the majority of it has been related with the internal power struggle of Red Bull, the Brit's mastermind has openly expressed worries about certain directions that the team went in without his approval. The cooling is one of these areas. Before his announcement of departing Red Bull, Newey said he isn't happy at all with the direction they're headed in, and when talking about the situation, Adrian said that these elements will be changed either later this year or for the next one, considering they have massive importance and cannot be shifted to a different direction just like that. Nevertheless, Hungary is a track that has a low-speed nature, and here we should never take away Ferrari's downforce advantage compared to the rest of the teams. Even though they're bringing a problematic flaw to the race, it seems like the SF24 is confident that the lack of long, fast corners will aid their car in a more successful way, and they will be able to fight for race wins, revitalizing the fight in both of the championships. This would be a massive problem for Red Bull because, as we've seen in Silverstone, it is only Max who scores the points, even though it was partially due to a ruined strategy for Perez. But it's still the Dutchman who decides where Red Bull ends up in the race. If a bad race is to happen to him, which was poised as a realistic scenario if the rain didn't affect the race at all, then they don't have a second driver to put their hopes on, unlike any other team out of the top 4 out there. This is something that Horner has spoken about, and when talking about the biggest challenge for Red Bull in Hungary, the Brit went on to say, "It is going to be interesting to see how we perform there. It could be hot. I think it will be the usual people who are quick at the moment. It is going to be an interesting venue, and I'm sure it will be very, very close once again. When you're at the sharp end, it's all marginal gains." Mercedes were quick in Silverstone. They got a pole and a front-row lockout, and they executed a good race with Lewis. If we are to have a little bit of a respective look here, even though it was Verstappen who won the last 2 Hungarian GPs, it was Mercedes the team that scored pole podiums in 2022 and 2023 with marginal gains over the rest of the grid. Be that as it may, with the race pace that McLaren and Mercedes have shown in Silverstone, Red Bull are definitely in trouble here, and the one thing that could help them is the temperature of the track, because although the tyre degradation has increased a lot compared to RB19, it still looks superior compared to some of the teams in the last couple of races, such as Ferrari and Mercedes. With McLaren, however, it looks like the Austrian team will have a serious issue, especially in the ending stages of the race, where the MCL38 does look like proper machinery when it is lighter and the tyres are at the optimal working temperature. This is what prompted Norris to have a proper shot at another win in his career in Imola in Austria, and had it not been for the ruined tactics in Silverstone, he would have stood on the highest step of the podium too. Good news for Red Bull is that they rarely miss with their strategy, which is why Verstappen was able to extend the lead to Norris in the Drivers' Championship despite having one of the worst races in his career after last year's Singapore showing on a pure race merit basis. All in all, the Dutchman also expects a lot of competition, and while he doesn't agree with the fact that Red Bull cannot find more gains from the car, it's evident that the team has reached a certain ceiling that has been further deepened by the disagreement Newey has with the current cooling version of the car. When talking about his own expectations in Hungary, Verstappen went on to say, "Hungary is an interesting track, and we're looking forward to racing there this week. The circuit is very narrow and twisty, and has a very technical second sector. It will also be quite a bit warmer this week too. Silverstone was a tricky race for us. Although we made the right calls, we still have a lot to work on and improve on going into the second half of the season." There is no doubt that Verstappen would have to be at 120% of his focus in Hungary if he is to win the race, because the competition behind him is severe, and with Mercedes also bringing an upgrade package to Hungary and Spa, the Silver Arrows have joined the top three all of a sudden and could be in a very interesting mix ahead of the second half of the season, which consists of 8 races. Be that as it may, Red Bull has already started to look at how the other rivals are gaining an advantage over them, which is never a good thing, even though it happens constantly in this sport. And in this particular instance, it's the brake duct trick that McLaren has reportedly used in some of the previous races that, while Red Bull complained about, doesn't really seem like a legitimate addition of performance. With McLaren closing the holes of the brake ducts during Saturday and Sunday's events that are legal to be opened during Friday's practice sessions, it still seemed like they're one of, if not the fastest car in the grid, so this request to the FIA might not be the one that the Austrian team hoped for to slow down their rivals that are marching with great speed towards dethroning them down from the top spot. With all this in mind, do you think that Red Bull will genuinely struggle in Hungary, given the fact that Mercedes is having issues performing on tracks that have a bit of a hotter surface? Let us know in the comments below.